What's going on, everybody? It's Professor Gnome, and today I want to, just before the new set comes out, I guess I'm a little late to this, or right on time, depending on how you look at it, but I wanted to take a look at the Stellar Crown set that's about to come out, and just some of the cards in it. I'm not going to do, like, a card-by-card breakdown, because if I'm being completely honest, a lot of the stuff in this set is kind of not great or mid, but the stuff that is good is really good, so I want to kind of highlight that kind of stuff real quickly and kind of go over that. I say real quickly, video might be like 20 minutes, but whatever. But yeah, before I start, thank you to all the channel members. As always, want to give them a shout out in every video that I do, so thank you very much for that. It's greatly appreciated. And yeah, be sure to join the community Discord in the description down below, and be sure to comment and let me know what you want to see first kind of featured in the upcoming deck lists and card coverage for the upcoming, new set Stellar Crown. But, to get into it and not have such a long-winded intro, we're going to get started. First things first is the new Venusaur EX. It's not really new, it's the old one that we already had, but it's coming out in the starter set. And so it's got a new art. I like it a lot. I think the art's really cool. Is the card good? Not really, but it's kind of fun. For the first actual card to look into, I'm going to close the ads as we go along. The first card to look into actually is Ladian, and it has the ability Sparkling Star Pattern, where when you play this card from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon during your turn, you may switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon with 90 or less remaining HP to the active slot. This card on its own I don't think is very good in terms of every deck, but there's specific decks that I think this is really good in. Specifically, Greninja EX, it can take advantage of this. Things like even potentially if Lost Zone becomes really common again and starts just running like Manaphy to counter Kyurem, then this kind of comes up really well. Really, it's like Greninja EX and Chen-Pal, things like that. They want to utilize Radiant Greninja or Greninja EX and things like that. Their main problem is running into Manaphy. Ladian is able to pull Manaphy into the active. You can run Canceling Cologne Ladian and kind of start bypassing Manaphys and things like that. So it's definitely useful. Even things like Jirachi, you can do this to turn that off and kind of bypass that to take KOs with your Sableye if you're playing Lost Zone. So I think there's room for it in very specific niches. As a whole, I don't think it's very good, but in specific decks, I think it definitely could be a good 1-1 line or something like that, so I wanted to highlight that. The next card that I think could be really fun but kind of niche is Cradily. I love Cradily as a Pokemon. I think it's really fun. I used it a lot in like when playing in like singles and stuff like that, playing like NU formats and stuff like that. But as a card, it's kind of always been relatively underwhelming. But I like this one a lot. It's kind of a really random kind of rogue strategy where what it does is it has the ability that once per turn you can flip a coin. If heads, you can choose either burned, confused, or poisoned, and your opponent's active Pokemon now has that special condition. Its attack for a single grass energy does 100 damage for every special condition your opponent has, so you can make like a fun little random rogue deck where like you can fuse your opponent if you get the heads, and then you can use like Brute Bonnet to poison them. You stack up extra damage, so like you're doing 200 damage, and then you can have like Hisuian Sneasler, make it 230 or 220, and then you can even run like the Stadium, make that even more damage. So it can pile up pretty quickly, as well as if you have a second Cradily, you can even apply like the burn condition. They're confused, so they have to switch out. So it could be a lot of fun. The issue is that Cradily is a stage 2 Pokemon, and you need to like use a Fossil and Lily. So it'll be kind of a rogue, kind of random meme deck, but I think it could be a lot of fun, so I wanted to highlight that as well. Rotom-Mow is not very good, but it is getting some looks, mainly because of the fact that it has the Harvest Dash, where if for 1 energy you do 30 damage, but what's more important is that before damage calculation, discard all Pokemon tools and all special energy from your opponent's active Pokemon. This is a good tech card if something like Lugia becomes like really prevalent, or there's just like really critical tool cards that start popping up all over the place. Because it's a colorless, you can kind of throw it down and use it that way. Again, it's really powerful into things like Lugia if they stack up a bunch of like special energies onto like a Word Ear. You can put this in, get them all discarded, and be really annoying. Do I think it's going to be really popular? No, but I think same thing like Ladian, it could just be this random tech card that could come useful later on in the future or in very specific decks. But for the most part, don't really think it's going to be that great. We'll close out this ad, but sweet Squirtle picture. The other card that I want to talk about right now is Hydrapple EX. I love this card. I think it's a lot of fun. I'm really not sure how good it will be. There's not a lot of great fire decks in the meta right now, which could help it a lot. Has a really high HP total. It does hit Charizard for weakness, and it combos with Ogerpon really, really well. The main weakness of it, obviously, is that it's a stage 2, but there's ways to get around that. I think I think comboing it with Ogerpon could help it out a ton. And right now, Grass just kind of keeps getting more and more support, so it could be in a pretty good place. Honestly, this is just a better Torterra. You just get way more value out of the damage, and the additional healing could be really good. So it's definitely a card to look into. I don't think it's going to be like an A-tier deck or anything like that, but I think it could be, again, like a random rogue little fun strategy. And that's it for all the grass. Most of the fire Pokemon are not very good. The Salazzle can be highlighted. It's kind of, again, like a random meme strategy where you can discard a card from your opponent's hand. If this Pokemon was evolved, then you can, from a Salandit, then you discard 2 more. The problem is that you're not doing any damage, so if they ever have an active Pokemon with, like, energy that can attack, then you only have 120 HP, so it doesn't really matter that you're discarding hands, because you're not item locking them, you're not doing any damage either. Even if this attack was just doing like 100 damage, it would be much better. But unfortunately, it's doing no damage. So your opponent, if they ever have a Pokemon that can attack, it doesn't matter that you're discarding cards from their hand. So I don't really see this card getting much play. But it has been talked about, so I thought I'd cover it. Cinderace EX is actually pretty cool. I like Cinderace EX. It's pretty simplistic. It's generic, unlike a lot of the other new Terra Pokemon, where you just need fire and 2 colorless, which can be ramped up with fire energies or whatever you want pretty easily. You're hitting for 280 damage, which is really nice, especially with a choice belt. You're one-shotting everything in the format, which is pretty nice. And the only problem is that on your next turn you can't use Flame Strike, but that's totally fine because it has 0 retreat cost. So you could even combo this with something like a Pidgeot EX. One of the things, too, that's really nice is because it has no retreat cost, you can actually use things like the Feather Ball to help find that more consistently, which is really nice. You can also get out the Score Bunnies with, like, Buddy Poffin, so as soon as you kind of get that on board, it's pretty easy to power up. You can rotate it around, so it works out pretty well. Do I think Cinderace will be the best deck in the game? Probably not. It's probably like the 3rd best Terra Pokemon, in my opinion, coming out of this set. But I definitely think it could be like a B-tier deck, just kind of, the damage that it hits for is really, really high. I think once it gets going, it can be really strong. The problem is just kind of getting it there. But we'll see what people can kind of create. Its second attack, not really worth that much. You can snipe stuff out for 180, which is okay, but I really don't think you're even going to be running the energy types to really utilize that attack in the first place. So we'll see what happens with that. Obviously, there's a reprint of Blastoise to coincide with the other reprint of the Venusaur EX. Blastoise EX is actually playable in comparison to the Venusaur. Blastoise EX does pretty well, so fun to see a reprint of it. Personally, I like the art a lot. I'm not sure if I like the art more than the original printing, but, you know, I'll definitely be reworking on a deck for it just so I can use this art, because it looks pretty cool. Continuing, we have Lapras EX. Again, not really a card that I'm super excited about. I think it's interesting. I don't really know how good it will be. The main thing is that, so it has Power Splash, which is just doing, it's not great, because yes, you can ramp up a ton of energy with, let's say, something like a Baxcalibur, but you need to get that into play. you're going to need a bunch of different energy onto the Lapras in order to use the rain attack, where you look at the top 20 cards of your deck and attach energy any way you like. The main problem is, like, let's say that we spread, I don't know, let's say out of the 20 cards and we're playing like 15 energy in the deck, let's say we hit 10. We just get really lucky. We hit 10 of those energies. The problem is that Lapras on its own can't really be the attacker because it's a little bit too weak, and you gotta invest so many energy resources that, like, okay, so you have Psychic and Metal Energy on this Pokemon, so we need a deck that's going to utilize either one of those or both of those, because otherwise it's not like you want to play like Fire Energies in addition to that to like power up something else. So I don't know. My biggest problem with Lapras is just like I don't see it really having the biggest uses. But like maybe I'm wrong. I'm really excited for this set to come out and for me to be wrong on a lot of this stuff because it'd be really sick. But I just don't really know the best use for Lapras yet. But in fairness, I haven't been looking too much into the Japanese lists yet. I've just been a little bit too busy to do that. So maybe Lapras is just popping off and I'm crazy wrong, but I don't really see the best use for it. Moving on, a lot of the other cards aren't really that great. Obviously, there's kind of the meme Caracosta card. There's a Greninja EX from the Battle Academy. Crabominable could be another random rogue kind of meme deck where it has the prep work ability. The attacks of this Pokemon cost 1 colorless less for each Kofu in your discard pile. So if you have 4 Kofu in your discard pile, it's hitting for 250 damage, and which is really good for a single water energy. It just means that you got to run a bunch of Kofu, and I don't really think it's gonna do that much. The problem is, like, on your next turn, this Pokemon can't use Haymaker, so you need a way to switch it out. You could probably do the same thing you do with like Palafin in this situation, where you just run like Subjugating Chains alongside the Morpeko and just kind of swap them around, so you don't really have to worry about the retreat cost or like situation. But even then, I don't know. I think it's just going to be a little bit too clunky to really work, but who knows? Maybe I'm wrong and it could be more efficient later. Same thing for these cards here, the Dreadnought and stuff like that. Dreadnought could be fun, actually, because of its attack, Iron Defense Shell, where you prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by your opponent's attacks that deal 200 or more damage. The main thing is, like, ironically enough, this card could work really well into things like Charizard, because they don't really have additional attackers, and so once they knock out one of your Dreadnought, they literally can't knock out any of your other ones. So, or at least in bare minimum, they can't attack with anything else in their deck that one-shots your Dreadnought. So then you get the ability to just continue to ramp up damage. The Hard Crunch for 80 damage, and then it does more for the damage counters that are already there. So, I mean, you'll slow roll get knockouts, but, like, ironically, it could actually not have that bad of a Charizard matchup. So it could be like kind of memeable into certain decks. Like some decks just don't have a choice. They have to do that much damage. But then there's like a couple that wouldn't really be bothered by it at all. So it could be fun. And in a very specific metagame, it could actually be pretty playable. But we'll have to wait and see how the meta kind of develops as we go forward. A lot of these other Pokemon going into the Lightning decks are not very good. But we're finally to what I really wanted to cover. Joltik is sick. Comboing into Galvantula EX is ridiculous. The Joltik has the colorless attack, Battery Charge, where you can search your deck for up to 2 basic Grass Energy and up to 2 basic Electric Energy and attach them to your Pokemon any way you like. So we get a fully powered Garvantula, like, pretty much right away. We get a, like, so we can attach them to the Joltik in the active. We can attach them to another Joltik, another Pokemon, whatever we want to do. It's a ton of energy acceleration. Yes, it only has 30 HP, so it's probably getting knocked out, but like we don't really care. We can sack 1 to get incredible energy acceleration on the game, like on our board. Then the other thing that's even better is Galvantula EX. this card hasn't been performing incredibly well in Japan, but I think it's going to do really, really well here. The main thing is that it does have the web charge attack for 110 damage, and your opponent's active Pokemon is a V or EX. It does 110 more. That's nice, but again, we're not really too worried about that. Really what we care about, though, is its secondary attack that does 180 damage. You discard all the energy from this Pokemon, and then during your opponent's next turn, they can't play any item cards from their hand, meaning we're item locking them. And that's already really annoying to deal with. We see cards like Banette EX, we see cards like Venomoth and stuff like that, where they're really powerful because just item locking your opponent very quickly is a huge pain. The problem with those cards is that they do like no damage, right? They're only doing like 30 damage, 20 damage, whatever. With this, we're doing 180, so we're two-shotting everything. Our opponent is item locked, and yes, is it annoying that all our energy gets discarded? Absolutely. But there's so many ways that we're going to be able to repower those energies over and over and over again. We're going to have things like the power glass, which will put an energy back on at the end of every turn. So that's one, are manually attached for the turn. And then what you can actually do is combo this with Blissey and just move energies from the Blissey onto the Garvantula because it allows you to move an energy all the time. There's an item card later on, I think it's called like the Glass Trumpet or something, that allows you to put energy onto a colorless Pokemon, which aka is your Blissey. So you're always going to be able to move everything. It's going to be really easy to keep up your item lock. And I think Garvantula is crazy powerful and a card I'm very excited to play. And really cool that it actually is one of the premier, like, free... I think it's the free deck, or it's the one with the Battle Pass. But regardless, it's super powerful, and it's very exciting that it's in the deck, like, in the game, and that they're giving it out. So definitely give this deck a try. One of the other things, too, this is a side note, but its weakness to fighting is really good, because there's, like, no good fighting decks out right now. The only thing we really see is, like... I mean, Greninja EX will hit it for weakness, but Greninja EX just isn't really that common right now, but I think it gives room for other fighting decks to kind of pop up, which I also think is good because we need more fighting decks in the format that can actually be playable. But moving on, we don't really have much else in the kind of sphere of electric cards. We do have the Slowking, though, with the Inspirational Challenge attack, where it's for one Psychic and one Colorless. We discard the top card of our deck. If this Pokemon is without a rule box, choose one of your opponent or one of your Pokemon's attacks, and you can use that attack. There's a lot of Pokemon to utilize with this. It's a very interesting kind of toolbox strategy. There's a bunch of different cards you can use that I think are really, really interesting, and this is definitely going to be a very, very fun kind of, again, like a meme/rogue deck. I think a lot of decks coming out of this, it's like, there's a couple decks coming out of this set that are unbelievably powerful, and then there's a lot of decks coming out of this that are just kind of like meme-y and roguey. More often than not, a lot of these decks are kind of in that meme to rogue kind of category, but the ones that are strong are ridiculous, and kind of, in my opinion, going to be like meta-defining. As for Slowking, I think it's going to be like meme-y and stuff like that, but I'm really excited for it. I love it. I think the art looks really good and really fun, so I'm definitely going to be playing a lot of Slowking. Moving on, there's not a lot else to really talk about when it comes to the Psychic Pokemon. There is a Drifloon that is kind of funny, where it does the Everyone Explode Now, where it does 50 damage. This attack does 50 damage for each Drifloon and Drifloon you have in play. This attack also does 30 damage to each of your Drifloon and Drifloon in play. So it's pretty cool because you can just very quickly like spam stuff out and do like 200 damage and stuff like that, and like it's cool. Do I think it's good? No. Do I think it's potentially kind of fun? Yes. And will I try to make a deck out of it that does something? Yeah, absolutely. I just think it's kind of funny. Moving on, though, we don't have a ton else that's really all that great. We do have the Dash Bun EX, where I'm not really sure how this card's going to be good. I think it definitely lends itself to control. I'm not sure how good it will be and if it will really do a whole lot in the future, but I kind of want it to because I think it's just such a cute card. That's my phone going off. My fault. Anyway, one of the things is that when you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon, what you can do is heal the damage from each of your evolution Pokemon. If you do, discard all the energy on this Pokemon that you healed this way. In control decks, a lot of the time, you don't really care if you're discarding energy because you're not attacking anyway, so Pidgeot control this will probably be very good in, and there's definitely other things that you can do to kind of build into it. It's very similar to like the Whimsicott strategy that people did with Torterra a little while ago. So I don't know how good it's going to be, but I definitely could see it being useful in the future. Moving on though, again, there's not a whole lot for the rest of the Psychic Pokemon. There's not a ton to talk about with the Fighting Pokemon either, which is a little bit unfortunate, because obviously I love fighting types and I wish there was kind of more for them to do. We do have Medicham EX. Unfortunately, it's kind of just a worse Serena, because where Serena puts them down to 30, this puts them down to 50, and that's just like not as useful. It'd be really nice if Yoga Kick did the same thing that it used to do on the Medicham V, or with like the Yoga Loop, where like if you got the KO, then after the fact that you'd take another turn or something like that. Unfortunately, that's just not the case. I wish it was that way, because that would make this way more playable, but right now that's just not really the case. So it's just kind of a worse Serena, which is really unfortunate, but you know, maybe there's ways to make this work. We'll just kind of have to wait and see and play around with it a little bit more. Because it doesn't have an ability, obviously you can combo that with things like Frostlass, and maybe go for like a Frostlass Brittle Bonnet play or something like that. So there's potential there, but I don't really think it's going to do all too much. Continuing to scroll down, we do have Garnackle EX, and I think I'm saying that right. This card's actually pretty cool. What it allows you to do is drop a little bit of damage, 170, and then during your opponent's next turn, this Pokemon takes 60 less damage. You can combo that with item cards and things like that to take even less, and kind of just make this super tank that's really annoying to get rid of. So it could be kind of fun. Actually, that's a thing you could probably combo with Dash Bun potentially, because the energy requirement isn't that bad. It's just a fighting and like, you know, 2 other energy that you could put on with a couple different ways, energy switching, whatever. And so potentially you could do it like that, and that could work potentially. Moving on, there's not a whole lot in the dark cards to really go over, and same thing for the steel. There's the Kling Klang, which probably isn't going to be very good, mostly because of the fact that if your opponent has a stage 2 Pokemon, you can play this Pokemon onto your bench, and then you play down a double colorless, you discard all energy from this Pokemon, it does 130, so it's good into anything that has like a steel weakness, which really isn't anything important in the game right now, but potentially later on, you could, you know, if Chen Pal pops back up, it could be used into that, but probably not much else. Continuing on, there's not a whole lot. There's an Archelodon that what it does is it has the Steel Bridge ability, where each of your Pokemon that has any metal energy attached to it have no retreat cost. This is pretty nice, something to splash into metal decks that already exist. There is an Archelodon coming out in the future, so it could be good with that deck as well. But for the most part, it just kind of helps a lot of things that are already running, a lot of metal energy, think Dialga, stuff like that, just not have a retreat cost, which is super valuable, to be honest. I don't know how impactful it will be as a whole, but I think it's very good, especially if we get better steel types in coming formats, and like incoming sets, then it just kind of has value. So I definitely think it's a card to keep an eye out on for, even if it's not very good right now, for the future. I think it could be really, really good. Earthworm EX is really, really fun. What it does is it does 150 damage, and then your opponent's defending Pokemon can't retreat. That's not really as important, though, as its ability, where when this Pokemon is damaged by an attack, then you put 2 damage counters on your opponent's or your opponent's attacking Pokemon for each metal energy on this Pokemon, meaning you're going to get to rack up a ton of damage from them attacking into you. The problem is that it has a low HP, but with like Metal Lab and stuff like that, you can kind of make them have to attack into you twice, which can be really good. Again, you can get in Archaludon, which makes it have a free retreat cost, so like you can eat one attack, move it, heal it, and kind of like go from there, which I think could be pretty good as a whole. Getting into the normal types though, Noctowl, absolutely crazy. This card, super, super busted. Noctowl with the Jewel Hunt attack makes it so when you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon during your turn, if you have any Terra Pokemon in play, which there are a ton of Terra Pokemon, almost everything in the current meta is a Terra Pokemon or runs one, you may search your deck for up to 2 trainer cards, reveal them, put them in your hand, shuffle your deck. So it's low-key just like better Pidgeot for one turn. You get any 2 trainer cards where that's a supporter and a trainer, whatever you want it to be, and it's super, super powerful. You can loop this with a Professor Choros if you like. You can run more than one. It's just super powerful, and I think this ability is crazy. We're going to see a lot of Noctowl run in a lot of decks, so definitely be on the lookout for this. Definitely pick yourself up some copies of it if you didn't already plan to. Just overall, this card is crazy powerful, so definitely give it a shot for sure. Continuing, we have Rotom Fan. This card is also super, super good because you can get it out with like a Nest Ball or whatever you want, where once during your turn, you may search your deck for up to 3 colorless Pokemon with 100 HP or less, reveal them, put them into your hand, then shuffle your deck. So why this is so important is because the 100 HP amount falls into play where you can get yourself your Hoot, your Noctowl, you can place down your Hoot. You have your Noctowl for next turn. You can even get yourself another card, let's say like a Pidgey if you run it, or you can get yourself like a Bidoof or whatever you want with that other option for another colorless energy. So it's super powerful, and Rotom Fan will probably be a 1 of in a vast amount of decks, maybe even a 2 of, because you don't want it to get prized. After Rotom Fan, we have Bouffalant, and Bouffalant is actually pretty interesting because of the fact that it has the Curly Wall ability, where if you have any other Bouffalant in play, you can, your basic colorless Pokemon takes 60 less damage from attacks. So this could actually be comboed with a couple of different cards. You can make a deck around Bouffalant if you really wanted, because it doesn't specify it has to have the Curly Wall ability, it just has to be Bouffalant itself, which could be a fun little deck. But mainly what it's going to be used for is, I'm going to scroll down real quickly and go to the Terrapagos EX. This card, because of its low HP total, if you can play 2 different Bouffalant on the field, you can get it to take 60 less damage, which is kind of nice. I do want to fast forward to Terrapagos EX real quick, because this card is easily one of the best new Pokemon in the game. It combos incredibly well with a Stadium. I'm going to fast forward to the Aura Zero Depth, or Area Zero Depth, Under Depth. Why was that so hard for me to say? But the Area Zero Under Depth, where what it does is that if you have a Terra Pokemon in play, that player can have 8 Pokemon on their bench. That's super powerful. It really helps things like Palkia and things like that. But it also really helps Terrapagos EX, because it does 30 damage, and then if you go second, you can't use this attack on your first turn, but it does 30 damage for each of your bench Pokemon. That's really big and racks up damage really well. It's just Palkia, but better, because you can do this much faster. It's a basic, you don't have to evolve. You're allowed to slap it down, throw a double colorless on, or 2 energies, however you want to do it, and start hitting for a ton of damage. And I think it's going to be really, really powerful, especially because, again, you can stack things like Bouffalant, you can stack things like Noctowl and reset them. You're going to have so much more bench space to play with that you're going to be able to do a lot going forward in order to protect this card, power it up, get it into the places you need it to go. I think this card is going to be incredibly, incredibly powerful going forward. So this card is probably going to redefine the meta for sure, and it combos with Bouffalant and a couple other cards as well. So one of the other things too is that you do have the Crown Opal attack for 180 damage, where during your opponent's next turn, prevent all damage done to this Pokemon from attacks from basic non-colorless Pokemon. So what it means is that if you're up against a basic style deck, if let's say you're up against like Roaring Moon or something like that, as long as you have a mist energy, you can throw that down and you're pretty much immune for the remainder of the game. There's a lot of ways to move the energy onto these Pokemon and things like that, so especially because it's colorless. So it really is really strong, and I could definitely see this card kind of redefining the meta as time goes on. But to continue to go further, we have the Root Fossil. This card's actually kind of interesting because of the fact that as long as this Pokemon's in the active spot, your opponent's basic Pokemon costs 1 colorless more. That can be really annoying, and it also gives you a little bit more time to play that and be able to utilize it in order to get into your Lileep and things like that. But also what's kind of nice about it is that you can be really annoying just kind of requiring extra energy. It doesn't really give up a prize card or anything like that when it's knocked out. You can discard it the way that you want, so it's pretty nice. I don't think it gives up a prize card. I actually don't know now that I say that. I don't remember how like fossils work, because it's like it counts as like a basic colorless Pokemon when you play it, but I don't think it gives up a prize card. I actually don't remember. I'll have to check that, because I feel like fossils didn't before, but maybe I just don't remember, because like the last time fossils were a thing was, I can't even remember when. But continuing on, we have Blair. Blair's okay. It's kind of situational, where if you play this card from your, like, you can only play this card if your opponent has exactly 2 prize cards remaining, which is possible in like a 2-2 trade, but until the end of your, until the end of this turn, if your opponent's active Pokemon is knocked out by damage from one of your Terra Pokemon, you take 1 more prize card. This is nice if it's like you have 3 prizes left, your opponent has 2, that maybe you're against Charizard or something like that, you knocked out a Pidgey or a Charmander early, so now you're at like an odd numbers. It could be useful in those matchups. Running it as like a 1-of could be nice because it's situational, but it's definitely a pretty interesting card. And with things like Dusclops or Dusknoir, you can kind of help set that up as well. So I definitely think it's a cool 1-of. I don't know how much relevance it'll have, but we'll kind of see as time goes on. With Crispin, Crispin. This card's actually pretty cool, where what you get to do is you search your deck for up to 2 basic energy color or energy cards of different types. Reveal them to your opponent, then put 1 of them into your hand and attach the other energy to one of your Pokemon. So it's nice little energy acceleration. It's 2 energy per turn, since you're going to be attaching 1, getting 1 into your hand, manually attaching that. So just another way to power up things. So again, this is a great card for the Garvantula EX, like I said before, because like you can power Hourglass in energy, then you go with Crispin, you attach the energy via your, supporter, and then you can manually attach for turn from your hand, and that just powers that all back up, and you keep that item lock going. So this card's actually going to be really good in a lot of these different decks. I think it's pretty powerful, and I'm sure we're going to be seeing a lot of play in that. The Deluxe Bomb is kind of bad, but could be really good in specific matchups or just kind of niche scenarios, kind of helping out certain cards a little bit, where if this Pokemon, or if the Pokemon this card is attached to is in the active slot, it's damaged by an attack from your opponent's Pokemon, even if it is knocked out. Put 12 damage counters on your opponent's or on the attacking Pokemon, and then discard this card. So putting 12 damage counters on the attacking Pokemon is really nice. Obviously 120 damage goes a long way. Turns a lot of times things that would be a 2-hit KO into a 1-hit KO. So there's definitely elements of it that are kind of nice. Overall, I don't see it getting much play or really doing too much, but it definitely could be used in niche scenarios or kind of meme decks, so I'm going to be playing around with it for sure. Another card that's really big right now that I think will get a lot of play is Glass Trumpet, where you can choose up to 2 of your bench colorless Pokemon, attach it to a basic energy from your discard pile to each of them. This is really big because, again, things like you could have a Terrapagos on the bench, or you can also have a Blissey. Blissey has the ability to move energy around, so you can use the Glass Trumpet, move it onto Blissey, and then use the Happy Switch to put it onto whatever you want. Again, making it really accessible for Garvantula to continue to item lock and things like that. I think Garvantula is going to be really broken if you couldn't tell already. Going into Grand Tree is really interesting. It's kind of just Rare Candy, the Stadium card, but instead of bypassing your Stage 2, you get to place it down on top. making it so you're a little bit more immune to like de-evolutions and things like that, which is definitely really nice. But honestly, the biggest problem with this card is the fact that stadiums are about to be all over the place, and it's probably just going to get bumped out unless you're like able to really pop off with it and really utilize it in a big way. It's probably just going to get bumped, and you're not going to get much value out of it. So I think in theory it could be really good. The problem is I just don't think it's in a metagame that it will be utilized with, especially when we saw the underground zone. With that being in so many decks that are about to come out, I think it's going to be really hard to utilize this effectively. You could still run it, but I feel like there's other A-specs you're going to want to run, and you're better off just leaving Rare Candy in your deck. But, I mean, we'll see. Gravity Stone is very interesting. I'm not exactly sure how it's going to be used yet, but it definitely is an interesting card. We'll just have to kind of wait and see. Where what it does is if this Pokemon, or if the Pokemon this card is attached to is in the active spot, the retreat of both active Pokemon is one colorless more. So for like stall decks and kind of like boss trapping style decks, it definitely could be nice. But I don't know how great it's going to be. Maybe it could just be something that's like a little annoying. We'll kind of just have to wait and see how this one plays out as well. Kofu, I don't love it, but I think it could be fine. Where you put 2 cards from your hand to the bottom of the deck in any order, and then you draw 4 cards. So it's kind of like you're plussing 2, but if 2 cards are dead in your hand, it kind of just helps you, you know, get a couple more cards. I think it's fine. I would probably, if you're looking for like a more kind of lighter draw engine, where like you don't want to have to use like a research or something like that, I would still probably end up just going with a Colress Experiment. But again, it could be used. Sorry about that. It could be used, but honestly, I probably wouldn't bother. I would just use Colress Experiment in its place. Lacey is also okay. You can shuffle your hand into the deck, and then you draw 4 cards. If your opponent has 3 or fewer prize cards, then draw 8 instead. This is pretty good for like late game. I think could actually be pretty nice, especially with single prizers, because you get to shuffle your hand back in the deck. You don't have to discard anything. So it definitely could be good. I don't think it'll be a really common card, but I could see of it being like a 1-of or a 2-of in some decks. Probably more of like a 1-of for like a late game situation, because in the late game, you have a thin deck, you're able to just kind of play this down, reshuffle, and then draw yourself 8 new cards. That could actually be pretty game-changing, especially for like single price decks, where you're going to be able to utilize that for a little bit easier. Outside of that, we have the berries, where respectively what they do is that the one is for fire and the other one is for psychic. But the way that it works is that if you're attacked by a Pokemon that is those respective types, then you take 60 less damage from that attack. Right now, the psychic and fire does not really matter that much. There's not really decks that you need that. It's definitely annoying for like Guardy to deal with. I don't think people are really going to play these that much. But that being said, going forward, if they make a version for this for like dark Pokemon, then that's going to be huge, because it's going to stop Charizard from one-shotting a lot of things in the later stages of the game, and that would be really, really big. So we'll have to wait and see if they print more of these for all the types, and if they do, then I think that's going to get really interesting, because it's going to kind of turn a lot of the meta into like 2-shotting rather than 1-shotting, especially if you can kind of run a tech of these and stuff like that, like a 1 copy in a deck just for a matchup you're like really struggling in. I definitely kind of like the idea of these cards, but these 2 typings are kind of irrelevant right now. And then we have the Sparking Crystal is the last card in the set, where attacks used by your Terra Pokemon this card is attached to cost 1 color or 1 energy less of any type. Right now, I don't think this card is that great, but with Dracopult, it's really good. So we'll have to kind of wait and see. Obviously, Dracopult already runs Neo Upper Energy, so that card's really good in that deck. So we'll have to kind of wait and see. I feel like that's so much of this set that, like, I keep saying that. We kind of just have to wait and see how the meta shapes out. But I think Sparkling Crystal could be really good. It feels more to me that this card will be really good as sets go on and we get more and more like Terra style Pokemon that we can utilize this better with. Right now, nothing really jumps to my head. You could use it with like Terrapagos, make it so you don't need a double colorless. You could just use a single color, or like any energy that you want, and then be able to like just start attacking, make things a little bit easier. You could prospectively do that. But I don't really know exactly if that would be like the best case use for it. Obviously, like I said, Dracopult loves this card, but it already plays Neo Upper Energy, which pretty much does the exact same thing. So, I don't know. Well, like I said, we'll just have to kind of wait and see. But yeah, that's the whole set, guys. Thank you guys for checking that out. Be sure to let me know what you're the most excited for. Obviously, if you couldn't tell, Garvantula is something I'm very, very excited for. Definitely looking forward to being able to play that and use that. So yeah, be sure to let me know what you thought and what you are most excited for. Thank you guys for watching. I'm really excited to get into the new set. I hope you all are as well. I know a lot of the cards are, in my opinion, are a little underwhelming, but the cards that are good are really good and probably going to be meta defining as we go forward. So yeah, just want to give another shout out. Thank you guys so much for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, join the community Discord down below, and yeah. Peace. See you guys in the next video.